Hello everybody, I'm Iain, and in this video I want to talk about what is the best martial art. It's one of those things that martial artists have really strong opinions on and love to debate, but ultimately the best martial art will be determined by the needs of the practitioner. What are the goals of that individual practitioner? And how well does that art in question fit those needs? There is no one best martial art. It all comes down to what best fits the individual's training needs. So in this video I want to talk about some of the things that we should all consider when deciding what is the best martial art for us. So the first thing we're going to consider is self-protection. How important to you is keeping yourself safe from criminal activity? So the first thing to acknowledge is if that's a major driver for you, you will need to study self-protection in addition to martial arts, because they're not the same thing. Martial arts training generally doesn't cover things like home security, mobile security, criminal behavior, de-escalation skills, knowledge of the law, and on and on and on. And these are vital parts of self-protection, but they're not parts of martial arts, right? So if self-protection is what you're interested in, go study self-protection. If you're someone who wants to do martial arts in the longer term, then what you're really looking for from your martial art, if self-protection is important to you, is transferable skills. Things within the martial art that will transfer over to self-protection. Now, generally what that means is you need a fairly holistic, solid, basic skill set. So you need some core striking skills, some core gripping skills. So you all need a martial art that is fairly holistic and doesn't specialize on one specific area exclusively. Now for me, I find that the traditional karate, as I practice it, gives me that. There's lots within the traditional karate that doesn't transfer over to the realm of self-protection, right? We do those things for other things. But it does have those core striking skills, core gripping skills, breakaway skills. It does have those elements. So for me, because self-protection is important, traditional karate will tick the box. And whatever martial art it is that you practice, you need to make sure that, again, it has that crossover. With the caveat that martial arts will never cover everything for self-protection, because self-protection is its own field of study. They're not the same thing. So the next thing to consider is sport. How important to you is it that your martial art has a sporting expression? And then, of course, what kind of sporting expression? Is it mainly kicking, mainly punching, maybe throwing, maybe a mix? So, for example, if you were someone who, it's vital to me that the martial art I practice has competition. And what I really want to do is I want holistic competition. Well, maybe MMA is the right art for you then. Or you may decide, no, yeah, it's important to me that it has competition, but the thing that fascinates me and I really love is punching. Well, maybe boxing's the right martial art for you. Maybe you're someone who just loves kicking. And so maybe taekwondo and its sporting offshoot's the right one for you. So you need to find the art that has that sporting expression and then fits your training goals and objectives, Now, so for me, the sporting side of it has never been that important. I've competed in karate in various forms, and there are a couple of judo competitions and things, enjoyed them for what they were, but it's never been a major driver for me. Sport generally is not something that interests me. So therefore, again, that traditional karate for me fits it. We don't have a sporting expression for the kind of karate that I do, but that's not a concern of mine. But if it was a concern of yours, you need to find a martial art that will provide that sporting outlet. So the next thing to consider is pressure testing. How important to you is it that your martial art develops genuine functional skill? Now, if you're looking for a sporting offshoot, you obviously want to be winning bouts, so therefore you're going to need pressure testing within that training. But also, if you're interested in self-protection, you're going to need pressure testing there too, because you need live experience of doing it. You need drills that recreate self-defense situations. You need drills that recreate protecting others and escaping and all that kind of stuff, right? So you've done it in training, and therefore that vastly increases your chances of being able to do it in reality. Now, functional training isn't important to everybody. Some people like martial arts for the history, the culture, the joy of learning a skill, a form of exercise, a form of moving meditation. And if that's what you have as your objective, you don't need functional skills. You don't need pressure testing. But for those who do, if you want functional skill of whatever type, then you need to ensure there's some form of pressure testing in your training. So the karate, as I practice it, has that. we do have live pressure testing for both self-defense components and for the fighting components. And therefore it ticks the boxes for me. Now, of course, you could go to another karate dojo that also includes pressure testing, but it might be the wrong kind of pressure testing. So to give an example, I could go to another dojo and they may have a heavy emphasis on points competition, and they will pressure test to develop skills within points competition. Well, that's not relevant to my training objectives. So it's not just whether you include live practice or not, it's whether that live practice is relevant to your objectives. Now for me, the karate as I practice it achieves what I want it to achieve. It has the right kind of training for the objectives I've set myself. So therefore, I am practicing the right martial art for me. So the next thing to consider are fitness, health, and longevity. Now they're closely related, but they're not the same thing. Now maybe you're someone who goes, fitness is really important to me. I want something that's really physically demanding and makes me as fit as possible. Now, if you want that, then choose something like boxing, judo, MMA, Thai boxing, something that's physically demanding and will develop your fitness to the highest possible level. Now, but against that, one of the things you may also need to consider is your health and your longevity. So this really intense training isn't sustainable in the long term. So you can train one way in your 20s, you could do competitive boxing in your 20s, not so easy in your 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, at that point, you've got to be moving on to another form of practice, otherwise it's going to be bad for your health, you're going to injure yourself, and your martial arts are going to stop. Now, the way I trained in my 20s is not the way I train now, and I'm certain the way I train now will not be the way I train in my 80s, right? The thing, for me, I do want that longevity. I do want the martial arts to be appropriate for my age. So I train hard for a guy who's close to 50, right? But I'm not training like I did in my 20s, because if I did, I'm going to injure myself and my martial arts are over. I have to be a little bit more sensible, just a little bit. Now, of course, when I get to like the 70s and 80s, I won't probably be hitting pads anymore. I won't be sparring anymore, because that would be bad for my health. And again, it could result in injuries that would cut short my martial arts. So the thing that I like about traditional karate for me is it has components within it that I can practice to the very end, right? So I can do Kion and I can do kata. Now, if you don't care about being a martial artist in your 70s and 80s, you don't need to factor that in. You don't need a martial art that has longevity built into it. If you want, a super intense martial art for this point in your life, then you choose something that's appropriate for that. If you want something that has greater longevity, you need to choose something that's appropriate for that too. Now, of course, again, the other thing is you may decide, okay, what's something that's got lots of longevity? Tai Chi. You can practice Tai Chi when you're very, very old. But if you're a guy in your 20s who goes, that's not challenging enough for me as it stands. You want something that has a greater physical challenge for you. So Tai Chi may not be suitable for you. So these are things that you need to factor in deciding which is the right martial art for you. For me, this is one of traditional karate's big selling points, is that it has many facets to it. And I can do it one way in my 20s, another way in my 50s, and another way in my 80s, but nevertheless, I'm still doing karate. So again, this is why for me, karate as I practice it is the right martial art for me. And you need to work out what your fitness goals, your health goals, and your desire to have longevity or not. You need to work out which martial art's right for you, considering those factors. So another thing you'll want to consider is whether a modern martial art or a traditional martial art most appeals to you. Now, of course, this will be balanced against all the other considerations, but there's also an element of a flavor. Some people like something that's new and modern and seems cutting edge, right? Other people like to feel that they're part of a lineage, that they're buried within a tradition. There's no right or wrong on this, it's just what personally appeals to you. For me, I find I'm somewhere between the two. I do like feeling part of that lineage, but I also want to be part of a martial art that can grow and develop. So I would call myself maybe something like a progressive traditionalist or a modern traditionalist, if that's not an oxymoron, but I know plenty like me. There are of course traditionalists who go, no, I want to try and do what they did 100 years ago, and I want to stick to that. If that's your thing and that's important to you, you need to find a martial art that does that. If you want, the best cutting-edge modern information and you don't care about whether it's got lineage or not, then maybe you want a more modern one. Or maybe you're someone like me who wants a little bit of both. The way I see it is, I want to draw on my traditional roots. And if you think of like a tree, the purpose of those roots is to encourage further growth. If the roots are dead, then the tree is dead. There's no more growth, right? The purpose of the roots is to encourage growth. So that's what I want. So for me, traditional karate as I do it, this kind of progressive traditionalism, a traditionalism that still allows growth, that draws on its traditional roots but is not bound by them, that's the right one for me. You need to decide whether you want something that's more modern or more traditional, or maybe something that's more in the middle. And again, this will bounce off all the other things we're talking about, but there's also a flavor to traditional or modern or somewhere between the two. Then you need to work out what is the one that appeals to you. So the next thing to consider is the training environment. What's the atmosphere like? Is this somewhere you like being? Now, some people would find a very competitive environment to be enjoyable. They would find it challenging and exhilarating, and they find it brings out the best in them, where everyone's competing to be number one. Other people would hate that and would want a more supportive environment. What works best for you? There's also the issue of whether you like formal environments or informal environments. For some people, part of the attraction of the martial arts is the formality. It's like a break from the everyday world, to step into this different culture for a couple of hours. I understand the attraction of that, but that's not me. Personally, despite the fact that I do a traditional martial art, I'm pretty informal about the way we practice it. Students never refer to me as sensei or anything like that. We don't use those terms. We never line up in any kind of grading order. We do little standing bows and taps of gloves to show respect, but we don't do all the formal kind of kneeling bowing or the meditation at the start and end of classes and stuff. That's not us. Students, we joke a lot. We make fun of each other when we train, in a friendly way, but we do it. Now, some, like us, we love that. We like that environment. We like that kind of friendly, open environment. But for others, they wouldn't like it. They want something more formal. So you need to find the right balance for you. Because if you're going to get good at a martial art, you've got to spend a lot of time doing it. And if you hate being around your fellow martial artists, or you don't like the environment, it's never going to last in the long term. So you need to find a place where you think, yeah, I like being here with these people. Again, it's a little bit more of a judgment call, but again, very important to make sure that you're doing the right martial art for you. So the next thing to consider is your degree of cultural interest. Maybe you're someone who is fascinated by Japanese culture and who loves the Japanese aesthetic. And maybe that's part of what attracted you to martial arts in the first place. If that's the case, you're going to need a martial art that reflects that. So you're going to want a traditional Japanese martial art that's practiced in a very traditional way. That maybe even has a dojo that's decorated in the traditional Japanese way, because you'll enjoy being in that environment. Maybe you're someone who's fascinated by samurai culture, in which case Iaido or Kenjutsu might be the right martial art for you. Maybe you're someone who loves European history, then maybe something like HEMA, historical European martial arts, will be right for you. For me, those things are not that important. I love the history of all the martial arts. I find that fascinating, but I don't feel the need to recreate it today. I'm a modern European, so I practice karate as a modern European would, right? Now, again, the way that I do it in my dojo would not be suitable for everybody, especially if that Japanese culture and aesthetic is something that's important to them. So in deciding what's the right martial art for you, you need to ascertain how important is cultural issues to you, and then find a martial art to practice in a way that matches that. So the next thing to consider, and it's definitely the most important consideration, is personal enjoyment. So when people ask me, what's the best martial art, my short answer is it's the one you enjoy the most. If you enjoy it, that's good evidence that it's fulfilling your training objectives, right? You're getting what you need from it, hence the enjoyment. Also, if you enjoy it, you'll do it regularly and often. And if you're doing that, you're going to get good at it. So personal enjoyment is massively important. Now, I've studied a variety of different martial arts and I've enjoyed them all, but the one I've enjoyed the most is karate, and that's why it remains the one I've practiced the longest, because I enjoy it the most. That's the thing that it has going for it above all others. I enjoy it the most. And I think the reason I personally enjoy karate so much is it's multifaceted. There's many elements to it. So for someone like me who has a relatively short attention span, there's lots to catch my attention. I could spar in a kickboxing style way, and that's part of karate, and I can grapple, and that's part of karate. I can practice trapping, and that's part of karate. I can hit the bag, and that's part of karate. I can do kata, and that's part of karate, and I do enjoy kata. I remember as a child, the first time I ever saw a kata was an orange belt doing pinan nidan. So not the most visually impressive kata, and it definitely wasn't going to be the best example of that kata, you know, it's coming from an orange belt, but I remember seeing it like, whoa, what's that thing? I want to learn that thing. You know, and I do find kata fascinating. I love learning them, I love exploring them. So for me, in line with everything else, with all my other considerations, to get the most enjoyment out of it, I need one that has kata within it because I find it enjoyable. And now, of course, because I also have the functional elements that I want to get in there too, then obviously naturally that leads to a bunkai-based approach. So again, with all of these things, you've got to find out, you know, what is it that you enjoy? You know, what are you enjoying? And if you're enjoying it, you've definitely found the right martial art. You shouldn't be training in a way that you're not enjoying. You're wasting your time if you do that. It's a road to nowhere, because at some point, if you're not enjoying it, you're going to stop doing it. You know, find the martial art that you really enjoy. You find the approach that you really enjoy. If you're enjoying it, that's a good sign, the best sign that you're doing the right martial art for you. So as we've discussed, the best martial art for you will be the one that best fits your training objectives. You therefore need to be crystal clear on what your training objectives are. What do you want from your martial arts practice? Having done that, you need to be equally clear on, does this approach, this instructor, this group, do they address those objectives? Because you may find sometimes they address some of them but not all of them, and that's still not good enough. So you may go somewhere and think, oh, you know, fitness is important to me and this is a great workout, but it's not functional what they're doing here, and function is important to me. Or you may go to a place and say, yeah, this is really functional, but I'm not really enjoying the training environment. You need to find the one that ticks every single one of the boxes, that addresses all of your needs. When you've got that done, you are definitely doing the best martial art for you. For me, you know, as I say, this is being traditional karate in the way that I do it and in the way it was taught to me, accepting that karate is a broad church. You know, there's many elements and facets to it. But the way that it was taught to me and the way that I practice it, it's perfect for me. It gives me everything I need. So without a doubt, for me, the best martial art is karate. Right? Definitely, no doubt about that at all. But that doesn't mean it's the best one for you. And in this, that's another important consideration, right? When you find the one that you go, yeah, this is perfect for me, it ticks all the boxes for me, you need to be mindful of the fact that not everybody's you. So if MMA is the best martial art ever for you, it doesn't mean that the other guy you're talking to wants to do that. He may have very different objectives to you. You know, karate as I do it is perfect for me, but I accept that there are other karateka out there who have a very different idea of what they want their karate to be. Now, so long as it's fulfilling all their objectives, they are definitely doing the right version of karate for them. So this is the key takeaway message from this video, really, is that there is no one best martial art. What you need to do is clearly define your training objectives and then find the martial art that best addresses those objectives for you. When you've done that, you found it. You found the best martial art.